One battle, one decision. Most people have never thought about it, but the outcome shaped everything that came after. The Strait of Hormuz is the most dangerous stretch of water on the planet. It is narrow, it is crowded, and it is the only way in or out of the Persian Gulf for the massive tankers that carry 20% of the world's oil. For decades, the United States Navy has patrolled these waters. They use massive destroyers. They use billion-dollar aircraft carriers. Their job is to keep the oil flowing. On the other side of the water is Iran. Iran knows they cannot win a fair fight against the American fleet. They do not have the same big ships. They do not have the same technology. So they have spent 40 years practicing a different kind of war. They call it asymmetric warfare. Instead of one big ship, they use hundreds of tiny ones. These are fast boats. They are small. They are hard to see on radar. And they carry enough explosives to sink a destroyer if they get close enough. But there is a problem for the fast boats. The Americans have very good sensors. They have machine guns that can find a target from miles away. In a clear ocean, the fast boats would be destroyed before they ever got close. To win, the fast boats need a way to get close without being shot. They need a shield. Imagine a row of massive civilian tankers. These ships are as long as 3 football fields. They are filled with millions of gallons of crude oil. They move slowly through the narrowest part of the strait. Now, imagine dozens of Iranian fast boats tucked right up against the side of those tankers. They are hiding in the radar shadow of the civilian ships. The American sailors on the destroyer can see the tankers. They know something is wrong. Their instruments are telling them there are smaller engines humming nearby. But they cannot see them, and they cannot shoot, because if they miss the fast boat, they hit the tanker. Hitting a tanker means a massive oil spill. It means a global economic disaster. It means killing innocent sailors from countries that have nothing to do with the war. This is the nightmare scenario for every naval commander in the Gulf. It is a game of chicken played with live explosives and the world's energy supply. In the real world, this has been a theoretical threat for a long time. Both sides watch each other. They test each other's nerves. But what if someone finally decided to stop testing? What if the order was given to use those civilian ships as a wall of steel and oil? What if the shield moved forward, and the Americans had to decide whether to fire through a civilian tanker to save their own ship? The moment that decision is made, the world changes. The rules of the sea that have existed for hundreds of years would vanish in a single afternoon. The ripple of that one decision would reach every gas station and every home on Earth. It starts with a routine patrol. It ends with a world that looks nothing like the one we live in today. The sun is beating down on the deck of an American destroyer. It is one of the most advanced ships ever built. It has sensors that can see a bird from 100 miles away. It has missiles that can hit a target in space. But today, none of that technology seems to matter. The ship is moving through the narrowest part of the Strait of Hormuz. On the radar screen, the crew sees 5 massive shapes. They are tankers. They are each carrying over 2 million barrels of oil. They are owned by different companies from all over the world. They are civilian ships, but they are not moving normally. Usually, these ships keep a safe distance from each other. Today, they are bunched together. They are moving in a tight line, almost like a wall. And then the bridge crew notices something on their infrared cameras. Tucked right against the hulls of the tankers are smaller signatures. These are the fast boats. There are dozens of them. They are moving in the blind spots, created by the massive civilian ships. To the destroyer's radar, the fast boats and the tankers look like one single, massive blob. The commander of the destroyer looks out through his binoculars. He can see the white wake of the small boats, peeking out from behind the tankers. He knows what they are. He knows they are armed with rockets and heavy machine guns. Some might even be carrying large explosives meant for a suicide run. But he cannot lock his weapons onto them. If he fires a guided missile, the missile might lock onto the massive metal side of the tanker instead of the tiny boat. If he uses his big deck gun, a single miss would tear a hole in a civilian ship. An oil spill would begin instantly. The crew of that tanker would be caught in the middle of a war they did not sign up for. The commander calls for instructions. He is told to hold his fire. He is told to wait for a clear provocation. This is the turning point. In every previous encounter, the Iranian boats stayed far enough away to be identified. They wanted to be seen. They wanted to show their strength. But today, they are staying hidden. They are using the presence of civilians as a physical shield. They are betting that the Americans are too afraid of the political fallout to shoot first. And they are right. The wall of ships moves closer. The distance drops from 2 miles to 1 mile, then to half a mile. At this range, a fast boat can close the gap in less than 60 seconds. The American ship starts to turn. They want to get away from the wall of tankers. They want to find an angle where they can see the fast boats clearly, but the tankers turn with them. It is a coordinated maneuver. The civilian captains are likely not in control of their ships anymore. Maybe their radios have been jammed. Maybe they have been told that if they turn away, they will be sunk. The destroyer is being backed into a corner of the strait. There is shallow water on one side and the wall of ships on the other. Suddenly, 3 fast boats break away from the shadow of the leading tanker. They are not just driving nearby anymore. They are accelerating directly toward the side of the destroyer. They are coming from an angle where the destroyer cannot use its main gun without hitting the tanker behind them. The sailors on the deck of the destroyer are holding their rifles. They are waiting for the order to fire, but the order does not come. The commander is staring at his screen. He is looking at the flags on those tankers. One is from Japan, one is from Greece, one is from Norway. If he fires and hits those ships, he creates an international crisis. If he does not fire, his ship might be destroyed. He has 5 seconds to make a choice. The fast boats are now only 200 yards away. They are so close, the sailors can see the faces of the men on the boats. One of the Iranian boats raises a launcher. It is a shoulder-fired missile. This is the moment. The commander finally gives the order to engage, but he is too late. The first explosion does not come from the destroyer's guns. It comes from the side of the American ship. The shield worked. The attack has begun. And the world is about to find out what happens when a billion-dollar warship is forced to fight with its hands, tied behind its back. The explosion on the side of the destroyer is not like what you see in a movie. It is a sharp, metallic crack that shakes the entire hull. Men are thrown across the bridge. The lights flicker and then go out, replaced by the red glow of emergency power. This is a ship designed to fight other navies. It is built to stop supersonic, missiles, and torpedoes. But it just got hit by a rocket fired from a fiberglass boat that costs less than a family car. The crew on the destroyer is in shock. They have been trained for years for this exact moment. But training for a war is different than being in one. Damage control teams start moving through the smoky hallways. They find a hole near the waterline. Water is coming in. The ship is not going to sink, but it is wounded. It is slow, and it is still surrounded by the wall of tankers and fast boats. The Iranian boats do not stay to celebrate. They do not circle back for a second hit. Instead, they dive back into the shadows of the massive tankers. It is a hit and run. They use the tankers to get close. They use the tankers to escape. The American commander is now facing a choice that is even harder than the one he faced a minute ago. Does he order his crew to fire everything they have at those tankers? Does he try to sink the ships that are shielding his enemies? If he does, he might destroy the fast boats. But he will also sink millions of barrels of oil and kill hundreds of civilian sailors. He chooses to hold. He orders the ship to back away. But the damage is done. The images of the smoking American destroyer are already being filmed. The sailors on the tankers have cameras on their phones. Within minutes, the video is on the internet. The world sees a billion-dollar warship leaning to one side. They see the Iranian flag flying on a small boat nearby. The aura of the American Navy as an untouchable force is broken in an instant. In London and New York, the people who run the world's economy are watching. They are not looking at the fire. They are looking at the price of oil. It does not just go up, it jumps. In 1 hour, the cost of a barrel of crude oil increases by $20. This is the Hormuz premium coming to life. Traders are panicking. If one ship can be hit like this, any ship can be hit. The shipping companies are sending out emergency messages. They are telling every tanker in the area to stop. Do not enter the strait. Do not leave the Gulf. Just drop anchor and wait. By the time the sun goes down, the busiest shipping lane in the world is silent. The Strait of Hormuz is closed, not by a fence, not by a minefield, but by fear. The Iranian government makes a statement. They say they were defending their waters. They say the Americans are the ones who put the civilians in danger. They know the world will argue about who started it. But while the world argues, the oil stays in the ground. In Washington, the Situation Room is crowded. The generals want to strike back. They want to bomb the ports where the fast boats come from. They want to clear the strait by force. But the diplomats are worried. They point to the tankers. There are still dozens of them in the area. Iran has moved more boats into the shield positions. They are essentially holding the global economy hostage. Every time an American jet flies overhead, the Iranian boats pull closer to the tankers. It is a stalemate. And every hour the stalemate lasts, the world gets poorer. The American Navy realizes they have a massive problem. They have built a fleet for a war that never happened. They built ships to fight in the middle of the ocean. They did not build them to fight in a crowded parking lot. The destroyers are too big. The carriers are too far away. The fast boats are everywhere and nowhere. The immediate consequence of the attack is a total loss of control. The rules have changed. The shield tactic has turned the Strait of Hormuz into a no-man's land, and the world is just starting to realize how long this is going to last. The first explosion on the American destroyer was a signal. It was a signal to every other Iranian fast boat waiting in the shadows. The shield had worked. The most powerful navy in the world had hesitated, and in that moment of hesitation, the swarm saw its opening. For years, naval experts had talked about the swarm. They described it as a cloud of small, cheap threats that would overwhelm a single big ship. But talk is different than reality. In the reality of the Strait of Hormuz, the swarm is not a cloud. It is a series of knives coming at you from behind a crowd of innocent people. The American fleet was now in total confusion. They were receiving distress calls from the damaged destroyer. They were seeing dozens of new radar contacts appearing and disappearing. But every time a gunner looked through his sights, he saw a tanker. He saw a ship filled with oil and sailors from neutral countries. The Iranians were not just using the tankers for cover. They were weaving between them. They were playing a deadly game of hide and seek at 30 miles per hour. This is where the chain reaction truly begins. The American commander on the wounded destroyer makes a call over the radio. He tells the rest of the fleet that they cannot wait anymore. He says that any boat approaching the fleet must be destroyed. But saying it is easier than doing it. To the south, a second group of ships is moving. This is the heart of the American presence. It is an amphibious assault ship. Think of it like a smaller aircraft carrier. It carries thousands of Marines. It carries dozens of helicopters. It is a high-value target. If this ship is lost, it is not just a tactical defeat. It is a national tragedy. The swarm knows this. While the destroyers are busy trying to help their wounded comrade, 40 fast boats turn toward the assault ship. They are coming from 3 different directions, and each group is following a different civilian tanker. The assault ship does not have the same heavy armor as a destroyer. It is a big, soft target. The captain of the assault ship sees the danger coming. He sees 3 tankers moving toward him in a formation that makes no sense. He knows there are boats behind them. He gives the order to his helicopters to take off and provide cover. But as the helicopters lift into the air, they face a new problem. The Iranians have placed anti-aircraft teams on the decks of the civilian tankers. They are using the tankers as floating fortresses. The helicopter pilots cannot shoot at the tankers because they are filled with oil. But the teams on the tankers can shoot at the helicopters. One helicopter is hit almost immediately. It tumbles into the sea. Now, the assault ship is truly alone. The fast boats break cover. They are only 500 yards away. The crew of the assault ship opens fire with everything they have. Small machine guns are spitting lead into the water. But there are too many targets. One boat is blown apart, 2 more are disabled, but 10 more are still coming. They are zigzagging through the waves. The assault ship is trying to turn, but it is too big and too slow. Then, the second blow falls. 4 fast boats hit the side of the assault ship at the same time. These are not just carrying rockets. They are packed with hundreds of pounds of high explosives. They are suicide boats. The sound of the quadruple impact is heard for miles. A massive fireball rises into the sky. The assault ship groans as the sea begins to rush into its belly. On the bridge of every other ship in the Gulf, there is a moment of silence. The impossible has happened. A major American ship has been crippled by a force that costs less than a single jet fighter. The swarm has broken through, and they did it by using the world's own commerce as their armor. The chain reaction is now moving faster than anyone can track. It is no longer just a naval battle. It is the beginning of a collapse. The sailors on the other tankers see the fire. They see the American ships burning. They do not wait for orders from their companies anymore. They start to abandon their ships. They jump into lifeboats. They leave the engines running. Massive, unguided tankers are now drifting in the middle of the narrowest shipping lane on Earth. Some are drifting toward the rocks. Some are drifting toward the burning warships. The Strait of Hormuz is now a graveyard of steel and fire. And the swarm is still out there, waiting for the next move. The world is about to realize that the ocean is no longer a safe place for anyone. The battle in the water was over in a few hours. But the battle in the offices of London and Singapore was just beginning. Most people think of global trade as a series of ships moving across a map, but it is actually a series of contracts. And every one of those contracts depends on a single thing. That thing is insurance. You cannot sail a massive tanker without insurance. No port will let you dock, no bank will give you the money to buy the oil, and no company will risk a ship that costs $100 million if they might lose it all in one afternoon. When the news of the attack hit the wires, the insurance world panicked. They did not just raise their prices. They did something much more drastic. They declared the entire Persian Gulf a total loss zone. This is a term used by insurers when a place becomes too dangerous to even calculate the risk. It means that if your ship enters that water, your insurance policy is canceled instantly. If your ship is hit by a missile or a fast boat, the insurance company will not pay a single cent. This is the moment the global economy hit a wall. Imagine you are the captain of a tanker sitting just outside the strait. You have 2 million barrels of oil in your hold. You get a message from your headquarters. They tell you that your insurance is gone. If you move forward and your ship is sunk, your company goes bankrupt. If you stay where you are safe. But the oil never reaches the people who bought it. Every single captain made the same choice. They dropped anchor. Within 24 hours, hundreds of ships were sitting still in the Indian Ocean. They were waiting for a green light that was not coming. This created a massive hole in the world's energy supply. The 20% of the world's oil that usually flows through the strait simply vanished. But it was not just about the oil. Think about the ships coming into the Gulf. They carry the food that people in the region eat. They carry the parts that factories in Europe and America need to build cars and computers. The Hormuz premium was no longer just a few extra dollars on a barrel of oil. It was a tax on every single thing moved by sea. Prices at the gas station did not just go up by 10 or 20%. They doubled. In some places, they tripled. People started lining up at stations before the sun came up. Governments began to talk about rationing fuel, but the ripple went even deeper than the gas pump. Modern companies do not keep large piles of parts in their warehouses. They use a system where parts arrive exactly when they are needed. When the ships stopped, the factories stopped. A car plant in Germany had to send its workers home because a specific sensor was stuck on a ship near Dubai. A smartphone company in California had to delay its new release because the raw materials were sitting on a dock in the middle of a war zone. The shield tactic had done something that a regular war could never do. It had broken the invisible clock that keeps the modern world running. The Iranians did not need to sink every ship. They only needed to make it too expensive for the ships to move. The total loss zone was more effective. Any minefield. It was a digital wall that nobody could sail through. And as the days turned into weeks, the pressure on the American government changed. At first, the people wanted revenge for the attack on the destroyer. But as the price of bread and gas rose, they wanted something else. They wanted the ships to move again. They wanted the world to go back to normal. But there is no going back once the insurance companies walk away. The bankers in London had decided the Strait was a graveyard. And until that changed, the global economy would continue to bleed. The Americans realized that their navy could protect a ship from a missile, but they could not protect a company from a balance sheet. The chain reaction was now pulling the world toward a massive decision. Do you accept that the Strait is closed forever? Or do you change the way you fight to force it? Back open? The answer would require a total rewrite of how every navy on Earth operates. The rules of the sea are very old. They are older than most countries. They are based on a simple idea called trust. If you see a merchant ship, you assume it is carrying cargo. You assume the people on board are just workers. They are not soldiers. They are not your enemy. For hundreds of years, this trust allowed the world to get rich. But after the attack on the assault ship, that trust was gone. The Iranian Navy had turned the world's most basic rules into a weapon. They used the freedom of navigation to hide their intent. They turned a peaceful tanker into a piece of military equipment. And now the American Navy had to respond. They had to write new rules of engagement. In the military, these rules are everything. They tell a sailor when they are allowed to pull the trigger. Before the shield tactic, the rules were clear. You only fire if someone fires at you. You only fire if you see a clear and immediate threat. A tanker was never considered a threat. It was just a big, slow box of oil. But now, every tanker was a potential shield. The new order went out to every ship in the Gulf. It was simple, and it was terrifying. Any vessel approaching within 2 miles was now a hostile actor. It did not matter what flag the ship was flying. It did not matter if it was a small fishing boat or a massive oil carrier. If it got too close, the Americans would shoot. If it got too close, the Americans would shoot. This was a massive shift in how the world works. Think about what that means for a young sailor on a destroyer. He is 20 years old. He is far from home. He is looking through a high-powered camera at a ship on the horizon. The ship is moving toward him. It is a civilian ship. He can see the name on the side. He can see the crew on the deck. He can even see someone waving. But his orders say that ship is a threat. His captain is yelling for a status report. His radar is showing a swarm of small boats 10 miles away. The air is thick with tension. He has to decide in seconds. Is that tanker just a merchant ship trying to get home? Or is there a fast boat hidden on the other side of its hull? Is that person waving a friend or a scout for a missile team? If he waits to find out, his own ship might be hit. If he fires, he might kill 50 innocent people. This change in the rules turned the Strait of Hormuz into a hair trigger. The presumption of innocence at sea was dead. In its place was a presumption of guilt. And it did not take long for the first mistake to happen. It had lost its radio in a storm. The crew did not know the rules had changed. They did not know they were entering a war zone. They saw an American cruiser and moved closer. They were hoping to ask for help. They were hoping for a tow or a radio repair. The cruiser saw the ship accelerating toward them. They saw it ignoring their visual warnings. The crew on the cruiser was terrified. They remembered what happened to the assault ship. They followed the new rules. They opened fire with a 20mm cannon. The cargo ship was torn apart in seconds. 12 sailors were killed. They were not soldiers. They were not part of any shield. They were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. This was the true step 3 of the chain reaction. The ocean was no longer a place for trade. It was a place where everyone was an enemy until proven otherwise. When the news of the Indian ship reached the world, the backlash was massive. Countries that were allies of the United States started to pull away. They said the Americans had become too dangerous. They said the Navy was shooting first and asking questions later. But the Navy felt they had no choice. They were fighting an enemy that refused to wear a uniform. They were fighting an enemy that used the innocent as armor. The United Nations held emergency meetings, but there was no answer. If you tell the Americans they cannot defend themselves, they will lose their ships. If you tell them they can shoot anything, innocent people die. There was no middle ground. The strait was now more than just a closed shipping lane. It was a zone of total paranoia. Every ship that entered was gambling with its life, and most captains were no longer willing to take that bet. The American fleet realized they could not stay in the strait forever like this. The political cost of killing civilians was too high. They were losing the support of the world. But they could not go back to the old rules. The old rules would just lead to more dead Americans. They needed a new way to see through the shield. They needed to move away from the big, expensive ships. They needed a fleet that could be everywhere at once without risking thousands of lives. This was the moment the dream of the Cloud Fleet became a necessity. The age of the giant warship was ending. The age of the machine was about to begin. The big ships were becoming a liability. For nearly 100 years, the aircraft carrier was the king of the ocean. It was a floating city. It cost $13 billion to build. It carried 5,000 sailors. It was the ultimate symbol of power. If you saw a carrier off your coast, you knew you had lost. But in the narrow waters of the Persian Gulf, the king was in trouble. The Iranian shield tactic had changed the math of war. Every time a carrier moved, it was surrounded by hundreds of potential threats. If even one fast boat got lucky, 5,000 Americans could die. The political cost was too high. The economic cost was even higher. The United States Navy realized they were playing a game they could not win. They were using a $13 billion hammer to try and swat a fly. And the fly was hiding behind a child. They needed to change the game. They needed to stop thinking about big ships and start thinking about the cloud. This is what military experts call distributed lethality. But for our story, let's call it the Ghost Fleet. Instead of one massive ship, the Navy started sending out hundreds of small ones. These boats were only 20 feet long. They did not have any windows. They did not have any beds or kitchens. That is because they did not have any people on them. They were drones. Some of them stayed on top of the water. Some of them moved just below the surface. And they were all connected to each other through a massive digital network. Think of it like a hive of bees. If you kill one bee, the hive does not care. The other bees keep coming. This was the only way to beat the civilian shield. When an Iranian fast boat hid behind a tanker, the big ships were blind. But the Ghost Fleet was different. The drones were so small and so cheap that the Navy could send 10 of them to follow every single tanker. They could get close. They could peek around the corners of the massive hulls. If an Iranian boat was hiding there, the drone would see it instantly. The drone did not have to ask a commander for permission to fire. It was programmed to identify the specific shape of an armed fast boat. It used artificial intelligence to tell the difference between a fisherman and a soldier. And because there were no humans on the drone, there was no hesitation. The drone did not care about its own life. If the fast boat fired a rocket, the drone would just take the hit. Then another drone would take its place. This destroyed the Iranian strategy. The whole point of the shield was to make the Americans afraid to shoot. They wanted to use human morality against the American sailors. But you cannot play a game of chicken with a machine. A drone does not feel guilt. A drone does not worry about an oil spill or an international crisis. It just follows its code. The Navy started flooding the strait with these machines. Thousands of sensors were bobbing in the water. Thousands of cameras were watching every inch of the coast. The cloud of machines was everywhere. The Iranian swarm found that they were no longer the hunters. They were being tracked from the moment they left the pier. Every time they tried to hide behind a tanker, a small drone would pop up right next to them. It was like being followed by a ghost that you could not scare away. But this shift had a dark side too. The ocean was becoming a place where humans no longer made the decisions. The machines were fighting the machines. And the people on the tankers were caught in the middle of a robotic war. The American Navy was winning back the strait, but they were doing it by removing the human element entirely. The Cloud Fleet was the future, but it was a cold, mechanical future, and it was about to lead to a world that was even more unpredictable. The Strait of Hormuz was being cleared, but the price of that victory was a total change in what it means to be a sailor. The world was watching this new kind of warfare with a mix of awe and terror. If a machine could decide who lived and died in the Gulf, where else would they be used? The ripple was spreading to every ocean on Earth. The age of the sailor was ending. The age of the algorithm had arrived, and the first true test of the machines was about to turn the Persian Gulf into a no-go zone for everyone. It has been 50 years since the last human sailor left the Persian Gulf. The great cities that used to sit on the water are quiet now. Places like Dubai and Doha used to be the busiest ports on the planet. They were the centers of the world's energy. But that world ended the day the civilian shield tactic worked. Today, the Persian Gulf is a no-go zone. It is a graveyard of steel and salt. The massive tankers that used to carry oil are still there. They are sitting at the bottom of the sea, or they are rusting on the shore where they were driven by the tide. Nobody went in to save them. Nobody went in to clean up the spills. Because for 50 years, the machines have been at war. The Ghost Fleet never left the water. Thousands of small, autonomous drones are still patrolling the Strait of Hormuz. They do not need food. They do not need rest. They just need the sun to charge their batteries. And on the other side of the water, the Iranian machines are waiting too. The shoreline is a wall of sensors and automated missile launchers. There are no people on the beaches. There are no fishermen in the bays. Anything that moves on the surface of the water is identified by an algorithm in less than 1 second. If the algorithm does not recognize the signal, it fires. This is the new world. The most important shipping lane in history was simply abandoned. The world decided it was easier to find a new way than to fix a broken one. Global trade did not stop, but it changed forever. The oil still flows, but it does not go through the water. Massive pipelines were built across the desert. They go through Saudi Arabia to the Red Sea. They go through Turkey to the Mediterranean. Thousands of miles of pipe were laid down to avoid a single stretch of water that was only 21 miles wide. The cost of building this new system was in the trillions of dollars. For 10 years, the global economy was in a deep depression. People had to learn to live with less. They had to learn to live with energy that was 5 times more expensive than it used to be. But eventually, the new world found its balance. The Persian Gulf was forgotten. It became a legend, a place where the rules of humanity stopped working. Children in schools are taught about the time when humans used to sail ships through the strait. They find it hard to believe. They look at the old videos of the massive tankers and the fast boats. They see the fire and the confusion, and they wonder why anyone would ever risk so much for a single drop of oil. The shoreline of the Gulf is now a permanent border between the world of humans and the world of machines. It is a dead zone. Nothing goes in, nothing comes out. The civilian shield tactic did not just win a battle. It killed the very idea of the sea as a place for people. The Navy of the United States is still the most powerful in the world. But they do not have aircraft carriers anymore. They do not have sailors who look through binoculars. They have data centers. They have programmers who watch the feeds from the Ghost Fleet from 10,000 miles away. The ocean has become a digital map, and the map is full of red zones where no human is allowed to go. The Persian Gulf was the first red zone, but it was not the last. Once the world saw how easy it was to break the global system, others tried it too. The shield and swarm became the standard for every small country with a coastline. The ripple of that one afternoon in the strait reached the South China Sea. It reached the Baltic. It reached the Caribbean. The era of the open ocean was over. The world was now a series of islands, connected only by pipelines and cables. But even in this new, quiet world, there is a question that remains. The machines are still out there. They are still watching the water, and they are still following the rules that were written in a moment of panic 50 years ago. What happens when those machines start to think for themselves? What happens when the Ghost Fleet decides that the shoreline is not enough? The long shadow of the battle in the strait is still growing. And the world is about to find out that a war without people is much harder to stop than a war with them. The shadow cast by that afternoon in the Strait did not just last for a decade. It did not just change the way we buy oil. It changed the way human beings relate to the planet. For thousands of years, the ocean was the great connector. It was the space between us that allowed us to meet. It was a place where a ship could sail from one side of the world to the other without asking for permission from every country it passed. This was called the freedom of the high seas. It was the foundation of the modern world. But the Hormuz lesson killed that idea. The lesson was simple. Any small group can stop the entire world if they are willing to hide behind the innocent. Once that lesson was learned, it could never be unlearned. The shadow of the civilian shield spread to every corner of the globe. It moved from the water to the land. It moved from the land to the air. By the end of the century, the world was no longer open. It was a series of fortified bubbles. Every country became obsessed with red zones. If you were not inside a bubble, you were a target. If you were moving between bubbles, you were a threat. This is the long-term cost of the choice made in the Strait. We traded our freedom for a sense of mechanical security. We decided that the risk of trust was too high. In the old world, a stranger was a potential friend or a customer. In the new world, a stranger is a potential shield. This changed how we build our cities, it changed how we travel, it changed how we think about our neighbors. The merchant's peace is gone. That was the period of history where trade was so important that people agreed not to fight in the marketplaces. Now, the marketplace is the battlefield. The long shadow is a world where there is no neutral ground. There is no place that is off limits for war. If a tanker can be a shield, then a hospital can be a shield. If a cargo ship can be a weapon, then a school bus can be a weapon. The logic of the fast boat attack moved into every part of human life. It created a world of total suspicion. The machines we built to protect us, the ghost fleets, and the automated sensors only made it worse. Because machines do not have a sense of history. They do not know what the world was like before the shadow fell. They only know the rules of the algorithm. They only know the red zones and the green zones. For the next 1,000 years, human history will be defined by this retreat. We stopped looking outward at the stars and the oceans. We started looking inward at our fences and our screens. The great age of discovery ended in the narrow waters of the Persian Gulf. It was replaced by the age of the bunker. The shadow is not dark because of smoke or oil. It is dark because it is the absence of trust. We realized that the global system was a fragile glass ornament. And we realized that anyone, anywhere, could shatter it with a small boat and a lack of mercy. The world that comes after is safer, perhaps. But it is also smaller. It is a world where the horizon is something to fear rather than something to reach. The long shadow is the memory of a time when we could sail into the unknown and expect to be welcomed. That memory is fading. And as it fades, the red zones grow larger. The machines continue their patrol, and the ocean continues to wash against the rusted hulls of a world that once thought it was untouchable. We are left looking at a world that is very different from our own. It is a world where the ocean has become a barrier instead of a bridge. It is a world where machines make the choices that human beings used to make on their own. We often think of progress as a straight line that always goes forward. But as we have seen, one single event can turn that line right back around. What happened in the Persian Gulf is a reminder that the things we take for granted can vanish in a single afternoon. The world we live in today is built on a very thin foundation. Before we close this chapter, there are a few things we should remember. The first lesson is about the power of the small. For a long time, we believed that having the biggest ships and the most money meant you were invincible. We thought that $1 billion destroyer could solve any problem on the water. But we learned that you do not need a massive navy to change the course of history. A few $1,000s and a clever, ruthless plan can stop the entire world in its tracks. We often focus our eyes on the giants of the world, but it is the small things that usually trip us up. The second lesson is about how much we truly depend on trust. We talk about global trade as if it is a machine made of steel, oil, and massive tankers. But that is not what it really is at the core. At its heart, global trade is a social contract built on the belief that people will follow the rules. It is the simple idea that a civilian ship is just a civilian ship and nothing more. When that belief is shattered, the invisible threads that hold our world together begin to snap. Once that trust is gone, it is almost impossible to build it back. The third lesson is about the tools we build to keep us safe. We often think that better technology and faster computers will solve all of our moral problems. We think that drones and algorithms will make war cleaner or easier to manage, but we have seen that technology often just removes the human heart from a very difficult choice. A world run by machines and sensors is a world that has forgotten how to be flexible. It is a world that has forgotten how to forgive a simple human mistake. The fourth lesson is about how fast the world can fall apart. It took hundreds of years of effort to build the system that connects every home and every factory on Earth. It took centuries of diplomacy and trade to make the oceans feel like a shared space for everyone. But it only took one afternoon and one clever tactic to destroy all of that work. The systems that support our lives are far more fragile than we want to believe. And once those doors are closed, it takes a very long time to find the keys to open them again. The final lesson is about the true price of security. As humans, we always want to feel safe and protected from the threats outside our doors. We can build walls, we can use machines to patrol the water, and we can retreat into our own little bubbles. We might be safer that way, at least for a little while. But in doing so, we lose the very thing that made us great in the first place. We lose the ability to reach out, to trust, and to connect with the rest of the world. In the end, the cost of total security might be the very world we were trying to save. This is a hypothetical scenario based on the historical record. Real outcomes would depend on factors no model can predict.